Do you like RPGs? I'm gonna assume you do if you've clicked on this video. And guess what? I happen to as well. They're one of my favorite types of games no matter what genre they are. Seriously, I can get lost in action RPGs, strategy RPGs, and my personal favorite, turn-based RPGs, for hours on end. Or at least I can, so long as I have the time to. There's no getting around it. I'm getting older, and with that comes more responsibilities. And more responsibility means less personal time. Now, don't get me wrong here, that's not a complaint. I have a wonderful family and a great friend group, and I love spending time with both of them. But it does mean less time for solo gaming. That can make it hard to play through JRPGs, with many of them ranging anywhere from 40 to 80 hours in length. Especially when an hour here or there really doesn't leave me feeling like I've made much progress in the game. And that can build up over time, sometimes dwindling my desire to play the game. In extreme cases, I've even been known to drop a game when it feels like I'm going nowhere and I've been playing the game for months now. And I know I can't be the only person suffering from these problems, as minor as they are in the grand scheme of things. So I set out to make a list of JRPGs that are on the shorter side while still being good games that are worth playing. My goal here was to focus on JRPGs that can be beat within 25 hours. Considering that's about half or even roughly a third of the time it takes to play through many JRPGs, I felt it was a fair amount of time to aim for. I also figured it allows them to be beat in 1 month if, ideally, 1 hour a day can be dedicated to them. And we're going to start off with some of the most obvious examples first, and I'm sure that plenty of JRPG fans are already aware of them. But I figured that they bear mentioning for those that are new to the genre but maybe don't want to dedicate a lot of time to figuring out if it's one that they like. First up, we have Most of you likely already knew that Chrono Trigger was going to be on this list. It's heralded as one of the greatest RPGs of all time by fans, and I count myself among them. It's actually my favorite game, and one I greatly enjoy revisiting every few years. For those unaware, Chrono Trigger is a story all about time travel as a group of friends get dragged across different eras to save their world. It features an upgraded ATB battle system as seen in the Final Fantasy games from around this time, as well as unique dual and triple techs that let characters combine their attacks. I'm fond of the SNES version, as that's what I started with, but if you're looking for it on modern platforms, then there is a PC port. It's not the best, with a few issues, but it is readily available. And if you don't mind looking around a little bit, then a copy of the DS version is a great way to experience this JRPG classic. And no matter which route you go down, you can expect to spend about 20 to 25 hours playing through the main story of Chrono Trigger. Next is another well-known JRPG series with Final Fantasy is one of the grandfathers of the JRPG genre, and it isn't one that you want to forget. Sure, the original NES release hasn't aged the best, but all of the versions released since the PS1 remake are easily worth recommending. And to top it off, you should be able to see those end credits before ever hitting the 20-hour mark. I won't lie, the story of Final Fantasy is simple when compared to many of the later entries in the series, but I always find myself enjoying the journey of the Warriors of Light to restore balance to the world and defeat the 4 great fiends robbing the crystals of their power. But I'll get more into that with my upcoming review of Final Fantasy I. And on a side note, the first 4 Final Fantasy games all fit into this 25-hour or less category, with the exception of the 3D remakes of 3 and 4. That means that you can pick up any of them if you're short on time, but you want to scratch that JRPG itch. Look at me smashing your preconceived notions of how many games would be on this list, and I'm going to continue to do it with this next classic. That's right, Dragon Quest I, or as we originally knew it over in the US, Dragon Warrior, is easily on this list with a playtime that may only be around 10 hours. And to top it off, the second Dragon Quest game is only a few hours longer, expanding this list even further. These are both able to be played on modern consoles thanks to recent re-releases. Granted, I'm showing off the SNES versions since that's what I am familiar with. But don't go running out and buy these games just yet. This is one of those cases where you might want to hold out before diving into the series. The HD 2D remakes of the first 3 Dragon Quest games are currently in development and they're looking great. I fully expect them to become the definitive ways to experience the Loto trilogy after they are released. Next is a series where almost every entry fits this list. Phantasy Star has a long history and multiple entry points for new fans. I'm showing off the first Phantasy Star because it's only about 16 hours and it's the first game in the series, but know that there are several universes that can all be checked out. The classic Phantasy Star games are pretty easy to find, but some of the other universes may require a little extra legwork to jump into. Personally, I'm a fan of the Phantasy Star Universe series, though its first game does fall just outside of the 25-hour requirement. Even so, you can just start playing the first Phantasy Star. It's a first-person dungeon crawler with turn-based combat and a story that spans several planets. And as I'm sure you heard with its title screen, it's repping a really fun soundtrack. I'd love to sing the praises of the other games in the original Phantasy Star series, but I've actually only played the first one. It was a lot of fun with the wife and I working together to manually create maps of dungeons during our playthrough a few years ago. Modern games never really require mapping dungeons yourself anymore, and it's one of those things that I wish more games would embrace. But I'm getting off track here. Let's move on to... The original Suicune might not get as much praise as Suicune 2, but that doesn't mean it is a bad game. And that's good news because Suicune 2 doesn't fit into this list with its playtime of about 35 hours. On the flip side of that, Suicune 1 is only about 20 hours to beat. If you've never played this game before, it kicked off the series trend of having a huge roster of characters with 108 available. Adding to that is its large party with up to 6 members allowed at once. And that might make you think that turns are going to go slow when 6 characters have to take actions, but the game takes this into account with multiple characters taking their turns at the same time. It makes the battles fun and hectic to watch, which keeps them feeling more engaging than most other turn-based RPGs. There's also a remaster of Suikoden 1 and 2 on the horizon that will bring them to modern platforms. Personally, I am not a fan of the new visual style Konami went for, so I'm gonna stick with the originals, but at least it will offer more people with the chance to experience this series from the beginning. Now we're getting into less well-known games with a haphazard trilogy. Soul Blazer, Illusion of Gaia, or Illusion of Time if you live in Europe, and Terranigma are a trilogy of loosely connected games all from Quintet. Each of them is an action RPG that will only take you between 10 and 15 hours to beat. These Quintet games aren't quite as flashy as some of the more well-known series on this list, but they bring with them a lot of charm that help them stand out as unique games that are worth playing. And if you find yourself enjoying them, you might as well check out the Grandstream Saga as well. It's a spiritual successor on the PS1, also from Quintet, and is another one that should only take you about 15 hours to beat. Heck, if you want the full Quintet experience, you can play ActRaiser while you're at it. It mixes elements of an action RPG, 2D platformer, and a city builder into a fun experience while only taking about 5 hours of your time. Also, it's the start of the Soul Blazer series that includes Soul Blazer, Illusion of Gaia, and Terranigma. If you want to get a better idea about the series, I have reviews of Soul Blazer and Illusion of Gaia that you can check out in the description. Also, basically none of these games have newer releases, with ActRaiser having a remake and that's it. So get ready to track down the SNES and PS1 originals. And yet again, I continue to go well beyond my 10 short JRPGs claim with another series. Dohack is a series that I have a lot of love for, and I will always recommend it to gamers. They're all action RPGs set inside of a simulated MMORPG, so it's a game where you play a player playing a game. The first quartet of games follows Kite as he seeks to uncover the mysteries of the world, the MMO that I just mentioned. He's doing this all while trying to wake up his friend from a coma. There's also a sequel trilogy following another set of characters in a rebooted version of the world called The World R2. Each of these 7 games are well under the 25-hour requirement for this list, and many don't actually touch the 20-hour mark. And with the story being broke up across multiple games, it's really easy to take a break in between them to help avoid burnout. Unfortunately, the original Quartet is still trapped on the PS2, and it can get a bit pricey. Luckily, the GU games have seen a modern release on PC and console. I've actually just recently started reviewing these games on my channel with a retrospective of the first entry, Dohack Infection. Feel free to check that out if you're interested, but do be warned that the video is heavy on spoilers for that game. But I promise I'm not just using this video to plug my other content, that would be silly. And to prove it, I don't have reviews of the last 3 games on this list. Let's enter into the final stretch with Mario & Luigi Superstar Saga is one of the funnest turn-based RPGs you will ever play. It brings reactive combat to the table that is a natural evolution of what was introduced in Legend of the Seven Stars on the SNES. Seriously, I consider this to be the true successor to Square's take on a Mario RPG, and leagues above Paper Mario. Superstar Saga is filled with goofy charm, interesting traversal abilities, and plenty of minigames to break up the gameplay, as the Mario Bros explore the Bean Kingdom to retrieve Princess Peach's stolen voice. And if you've never considered the series before, now is the perfect time with Brothership, the newest entry, set to come out later this year. And just to address this real quick, I have never played the Superstar remake, so I have no idea if it is worth recommending over the GBA original, which is available through Nintendo Switch Online. Now we move on to what might be a controversial pick. Lunar Legend is a remade version of the PS1 JRPG classic Lunar Silver Star Story Complete, but for the GBA. And that's also the only way to play it right now, as this version of the game hasn't been released besides that cartridge. It cuts out the world map exploration, cutscenes, and voice acting, and it also changes up the battle style as compared to the PS1 release. All of these changes drop the playtime to about 20 hours, as compared to the nearly 30 that it takes to beat Silver Star Story Complete, or Silver Star Harmony, which is a remake on the PSP. And here's where I'm gonna get even more controversial. Lunar Legend is the best version of the game to play, if only because Ubisoft kept closer to the original Japanese when translating the game. I've talked about this on the channel before. Okay, so I can get one more plug-in, go watch my Vanguard Bandits review. But Working Designs, which originally published Lunar Silver Star Story in the US, loved to fill their localizations full of pop culture references and dumb jokes. And while I am grateful to them for publishing the games back in the day, that does not mean that I have to stand by them or their works now. Play Lunar Legend and enjoy the classic story of adventure it tells. Go on a journey with Alex as he sets out from his small village to become a dragon master. Fall in love with Luna and learn about the secrets of her past. Make allies and enemies all throughout your journey. And most importantly, do it all without a butchered script. And with that tiny rant over, let's dig into our last short JRPG. The last story is what happens when the father of Final Fantasy makes a new IP after leaving Square. Hironobu Sakaguchi directed this game at Mistwalker Studio following the mixed reception of Blue Dragon and Lost Odyssey. By the way, do not sleep on either of those if you are looking for longer JRPGs. Both are great, with Lost Odyssey basically being a strong successor to the Final Fantasy series. The last story manages to capture the same feel with its story and world that fans of Final Fantasy are so familiar with. However, it does so with action RPG combat instead of turn-based. Also, there's not a full world to explore, as the game's story largely centers around a massive city, which is home to many stacks of oranges that can be used to trip up the residents. Seriously, I spent way too much time playing around with this during my first run through the game. The cast is also great, with characters bouncing off of each other with lots of small jabs and insults, all in the friendly manner that you would expect from a found family. If you enjoyed the camaraderie in Final Fantasy XV, then you'll likely love the chemistry the characters in the last story have. Plus, there's a love story if that's your thing. It's very much mine, as I am admittedly a bit of a romantic. Also, you'll have to forgive me for the color-coded characters. This is my New Game Plus file, and in my previous run, I changed everyone's clothes colors to make them more easy to identify during battles. You don't have to make them look like Power Rangers, I'm just dumb and kept losing track of them in combat. I'd love to see The Last Story get a Switch re-release like so many other Wii games have. Unfortunately, Sakaguchi doesn't appear to have any interest in a remaster right now, and while it seems like Nintendo at least partially owns the game, it hasn't expressed any interest in it either. That's a real shame considering it was part of the Operation Rainfall campaign by fans. This sought to bring over 3 Wii JRPGs exclusive to Japan to the rest of the world. And it was a success. The other 2 were Pandora's Tower and Xenoblade Chronicles, and we have seen how much the Xenoblade series has grown since then. Maybe The Last Story could get some of that love, right Nintendo? And with that, this list is complete. While I only promised 10 short JRPGs, you now have a list of roughly 30 games you can play that won't absolutely drain all of your free time. Also, if you ever need help figuring out how long it's going to take to beat a game, How Long to Beat is a website dedicated to just that. I used it as a major source along with my personal experiences while creating this video. Feel free to hit me up with any questions or comments down below. And because YouTube keeps telling me that I am trash at promoting myself, I'll also mention real quick that memberships are now live, starting at just 99 cents per month. With all of that said, thanks for watching, and until next time, take it easy.